But please stay on mute unless you have a question or a comment. And now I'd like to pass it over to your committee chairs, Scott Francis and Judy Liu. Take it away.
Thanks, Leo. Thanks for the introduction. Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Francis. Judy, you want to give a quick hi on your end?
Hi, Judy Liu. Nice to see you all.
Yep, and we'd like to thank you for joining us today for this discussion. We look like we have a relatively small group, so by all means, feel free to chime in with comments, questions, whatever during this discussion. We've got 3 or 4 slides kind of pulled together to give a little update on what the Basic Education Committee has been up to, and what we've been working on, kind of where we're headed. And we're always open to suggestions. We're always looking for new participants. If anybody's interested in that, certainly feel free to reach out to Judy or I and let us know, and we'd be happy to get you hooked into the group. We meet generally monthly or so. We've got a couple of small breakout groups that meet more frequently than that right now. And we'll get into that a little bit more in just a couple of minutes when we start talking about some of our initiatives for this year. For those of you that were on the welcome and keynote address earlier, I think you might have heard Emily give us a little shout out. So just as a little bit of background, both myself and Judy are new co-chairs to the Basic Education Committee. We both came on. I came on a couple of months a little bit ahead of Judy, but kind of late last year, and then she started kind of late 2019, and she came in kind of early 2020. So our first years were obviously a little bit interesting with everything going on with COVID. But the Basic Education Committee is kind of remained the same group of dedicated folks. And we were able to kind of set a new agenda and kind of work forward from there. So a little bit of personal background. I am a practitioner. And I'm located in Virginia. I work for the company Wiley Wilson. Most of our work's kind of federal work. But I've got about 20 plus years of experience. The last 15 or so, I've done some mentoring or managing of younger engineers. It's something that I've always had an interest in doing. And as I found out a little bit more about NCSEA, as I was a member in local chapter, found out about the Basic Education Committee and kind of came on board probably 3 or 4 years ago now at this point. I have an interest in seeing that education that they're getting at the college level, with the idea of, eventually I want them to move into the professional level and come work for me. And I was seeing some discrepancies in preparation of students for the working world and thought that this might be a good committee for me. So if some of you out there are in that role and maybe have similar thoughts, Basic Education might be a place for you. Judy, why don't you give a little background about yourself real quick, and because you're kind of on the opposite spectrum of that opposite side of that coin from me.
Sure. So I'm on faculty at Oregon State University, structural engineering, but also teach courses like our capstone, senior capstone design course currently. I seem to have, so first of all, I'm a bit of a structural steel nerd, so I'm very active with AISC and various committees within that organization. And it seems to me committees like the Basic Education Committee, I think I'm kind of addicted to them. I'm also on AISC's Partners in Education Committee. I'm currently the chair of that. And it's another one of these great groups that has a mix of academics and industry. And really we're looking at, how can we move the industry forward with some focus on our students and structural engineering education.
All right, thanks, Judy. So one of the things that happened last year with the Basic Education Committee was a change in our mission statement. It was tweaked a little bit there. I've got it pulled up on the screen right now for everybody to kind of see. It was kind of a refocusing of what we were doing. I'll talk a little bit more as we kind of move forward and get into the initiatives about what we had been doing over the last 4 or 5 years, and a little bit more about what we are doing now. But in general, the basic gist didn't change. I mean, the Basic Education Committee is all about understanding what students are learning at the collegiate level, what employers are looking for in their young professionals, and trying to figure out ways to marry those two together to help bridge gaps that we see developing between those two worlds. I know, as I said before, I've done mentoring and managing of engineers for a number of years now. And I usually talk to them when they're first coming in and tell them, the learning curve, I feel on the structural side is very steep. The first few years, it's like drinking from a fire hose. There's a lot going on, and we're trying to help reduce that a little bit in the places that we can. So again, this is a tweaking of our mission statement. We find that it's been useful for us as we've kind of moved forward through 2020 and now into 2021 to kind of give us that focal point again and compare our initiatives back against this mission statement and making sure that we're following the direction and lead from the NCSEA leadership. So as a result of that, there's a number of little steps that we've kind of identified based off the mission statement. We're going to engage community to facilitate the transition between education and professional practice, just as I was mentioning. Share recommended curriculum and the knowledge and skills identified as necessary by the engineering community. That's one thing that NCSEA has done is developed a recommended curriculum that the Basic Education Committee is kind of responsible for promoting that idea, kind of keeping the list of courses and kind of description of those and what those kind of educational outcomes are that we're looking for the students. So that is actually located on our webpage, on the Basic Education Committee webpage. There's a link to it. So we are committed to continuing along with that, looking at latest trends and concerns in the industry and advocating awareness and engagement with educators and students regarding those concerns. Engaging the various other NCSEA continuing education publications, young member support groups, and looking to develop content and how best to share with students and institutions and new graduates who are entering the profession, how to bridge that gap. That's a lot of what our scope of work currently is how do we communicate with these different groups on the educational side, on the student side, and back to the professional level, and go back and forth between those two so that everybody kind of understands each other and what we're looking for and what we're all about. And of course, assisting the member organizations with engaging with their local educational institutions. And we'll talk a little bit more about that one here in a minute. And let's see, engaging with other organizations to identify efforts where we're aligned to provide extracurricular activities, professional development programs that promote knowledge and skills, and to discuss industry trends. So we're always, as members of the BEC, we're always looking to work with other organizations. As Judy mentioned, AISC would be one of those such organizations, and keeping tabs on what they're doing, especially on the educational side with regard to students, and maybe even up to the young professional level, and seeing how that where there's alignment with what we're doing. Can we help out with each other and what we can do to promote those things that we see that are really benefiting the structural engineering community as a whole. So here's basically the basic education initiatives that we've elected to do as a group and are currently working on. But let me take you back just a little bit to kind of before Judy and I came on as co-chairs and what the Basic Education Committee was doing at that time. For probably about the last 10 years or so, we've really been known for really two things in particular. One is the curriculum survey that we've done on a triennial basis, where we've reached out to universities and colleges throughout the country to try and gather information that they have on their programs, especially in the relationship to the recommended courses that NCSEA has put forth as being our kind of 12 recommended courses. As a result of those surveys, we put out articles in Instructure Magazine. There's actually going to be one coming up, which is actually the first item listed up there, the curriculum survey article, will be in the May issue of Structural Magazine. So it should be coming out here really soon. Basically what we've done is we've gone through that data, we've collected, and we asked them probably 20 or 30 questions about their program, about their course offerings, about reasons why certain courses weren't offered, about student organizations. We just tried to collect as much information as we could. And they were generally sent out to either somebody who was identified from the previous survey as a professor or a faculty member that was in some way involved in structural education, whether it be a steel course or something along those lines, or maybe a head of a department type person. Purely voluntary survey, but we've gotten good numbers. I think we've got almost 176 universities or colleges that responded to us, which was a pretty good number. And so essentially we culled through that data and pulled some information out. The other thing that the Basic Education Committee have been doing for a number of years is a practitioner survey, which Emily mentioned in her welcoming address earlier this afternoon, in which case we've gone out to the kind of the other side of that and talked to practitioners, asking them questions about the same courses and their relevance and importance to them as practitioners and as employers of future students and future graduates who are transitioning from the educational side onto the professional side. And what we've done, we just completed that last practitioner survey, I think it was late last year. And we've gotten the survey results. And so we will essentially develop, it's the third item on the slide that you see in front of you. We're working on developing an article from that to discuss the practitioner side of that. And then we will potentially do a third article kind of marrying the two pieces together, the academic side of it and the practitioner survey, to, again, try and look for those places where there might be some gaps in the educational preparedness of the students who are coming out, and try and see what NCSEA as a whole can do through all the various resources that we have available to us to help close in those gaps, find answers and solutions, and make sure that we're promoting, again, the basic education NCSEA approved credit or curriculum that in courses that we're hoping that everybody is at least having an opportunity to be exposed to at the educational level in university and college. So some of what we're doing in the 2021 and even moving forward through 2021 and into 2022 is the results of those surveys that we had done in 2019 and 2020. In addition to those things, we've taken on a few new tasks as well. One of which we're teaming with a educator who was interested in producing some ethics articles that are going to be published in Instructure Magazine as well. I think those will probably come out in the summer. It was an opportunity to provide some additional educational material that is relevant and maybe not fully accessible to everybody at the undergraduate level, and even at the professional level, to give them some more ethics background and information. It was a nice tie-in with Basic Education Committee, so we elected to take on that that charge or that initiative as well. In addition to that, the fourth item down on the list is the information resource page. We identified that, on the NCSEA website, seems to be an opportunity for us to provide more links and connections for different levels of folks to find out industry information. So we're really targeting not only students, but also educators and really the young professional or even the mid-level professional as well, and providing them with links to other websites that are already out there that provide resources on structural engineering. So we've been developing that for about 6 months now, and we're starting to kind of hone in a little bit on how to get that set up and working on the NCSEA webpage, with the idea that it'll be added to the resources tab. And depending on kind of which vantage point you're entering in, there will be some links related in there to, various other organizations that have put out tons of information that, especially at the student level and even at the educator level, they may not be fully aware of yet as to what resources are out there and available to them, as they're trying to understand more about some of the various topics that we hit all the time: masonry, steel, cold form, framing, all those types of things, concrete, and where to go and that springboard to help move them into those websites and short circuit the time it takes to try and figure out, like, where should I be going for educator material on this. I've been asked to teach a new course at our university and I don't have a ton of background in wood, for example. Where can I go find information about wood? And we're trying to provide those types of resources to folks. Again, the idea is not that the Basic Education Committee is creating all of this information. It's just that we are compiling it into what we hope to be a usable interface that they can go and find that information quickly and then move on and get what they need. So we're working on that. We're also, one of our kind of newer charges that I kind of alluded to earlier that we'd be coming back to was student chapters. So previously, the Basic Education Committee wasn't directly involved with student chapter development. As part of our mission statement has changed a little bit, and we talked a little bit about one of the bullet points that we had on there earlier was working with member organizations on the educational side of things for student chapters. And so what we started doing a little bit is, quite frankly, the student chapters were a little bit of a big black hole for us. We started asking around a little bit at the NCSEA level, and there wasn't a lot of information available, largely because the student chapters are mostly run, as I think you all know, through the member organizations. So we started looking back through our curriculum data to see which of the colleges and universities had responded back to us and indicated that they had student chapters. We found that there were about 25 student chapters as of the time of our curriculum survey that were reported back to us throughout the nation. A surprising number of them came from Ohio, which was surprising to us only because Ohio is not like, the biggest state or the most populous state. So we actually did a little bit of research and called up and asked for the member organization to come and sit on one of our monthly meetings and give us a little description about, how does Ohio do their student chapters and what has made them successful. We learned a lot of information from that about what Ohio is doing to be successful. It really takes an active engagement on the member organization side to really develop those relationships that need to occur in order to facilitate those student chapters. And so that was really good information for our group to hear about and try and then piece together what kind of next steps we can do to help facilitate growth and expansion of student chapters throughout the country. In a multi-year process. This isn't obviously something that you can just be, especially in an odd COVID year. It wasn't something where we were like, okay, well, we're going to establish 10 student chapters, across the nation, when most of these colleges have had very different learning models over the past year than they would have typically have had, with a lot more remote learning, a lot of other challenges on, across the board. It didn't seem like the best way to do it. So we've kind of been using this as a data collection year on our part. But one thing that we're excited about is that we've started moving forward on a national student chapter, a virtual panel, obviously virtual for the obvious reasons of we have no idea exactly what things are going to look like in the early fall. But essentially this September timeframe we're thinking right now, we're going to have a student panel chapter where we get about 5 students who are currently students in NCSEA student chapters throughout the country. We've at least got one from Ohio. I think we've got one from Kansas, at least one from California, and I think we've got a couple others from a couple other places. And the idea is that we're going to get those students together virtually. We're going to invite all the student chapters and try and publicize through our member organizations. So if you guys are interested, when you are interested in developing and promoting student chapters within your area, geographical area or state, or however you're broken out, we would love to have your participation and marketing to your groups within your states as well when that comes to pass. And the idea there is that we will talk to those students and provide some questions for them about what has worked in their student chapters, what are the advantages of having student chapters, what hadn't worked, what's difficult to do, what are the good ideas for promoting and developing a strong student chapter. And so we're really excited about that idea, and we've really made some good inroads into getting that set up in a lot of places right now. And so those are kind of the initiatives that we're working on. I see that some people are throwing some chats out at me. I've been talking really fast, so I apologize. Again, Basic Education Committee, that's kind of what we're about right now. Really trying to develop some resource information for students and educators especially, but also young members, because there's a transition in there where those young members have good contacts back to the students. They also have contacts forward into their professional level. And so we're working with the young member support group a little bit on that as well. But working with those groups and trying to find ways to provide them with resources, trying to find them ways to find where there are gaps in either education, training, whatever that may be, and trying to at least bring light upon those and helping to find the right NCSEA group, committee, whatever, to help bridge those gaps. And where we can, develop and start working forward on developing student chapters. Judy, did I miss anything?
No, I think that was very thorough. Thank you so much. I did have something I might throw in, but maybe we can first address the question in the chat.
All right, let's see. I see one here from Kenneth Odell. As SEs, we tend to focus our questions and solutions on technical aspects of our profession. Has consideration been given to the importance of non-technical education? Example would be helping to set an interdisciplinary mindset, understanding what the other consultants are doing so we can get out of our own silos and see the fullness of the project and be empowered to solve the interface between different aspects of the project. Kenneth, I think that's an excellent kind of question and statement as well. I will answer a little bit from my perspective, real briefly, and then I'm certainly interested in hearing Judy's perspective at the collegiate level. But I work for a multidiscipline firm, so I definitely am a strong believer in stepping outside of our silo of the structure and looking at the bigger picture of the overall project itself. And that is definitely something that I think young engineers, struggle with a little bit. They get very into, if it's a steel building, that, I got to design this lateral system, I got to design these connections, and they don't often think of all the other pieces in there and conflicts, and they don't quite have that mindset yet. And I know on the professional level, we spend a fair amount of time training them. But we have spoken a little bit at the Basic Education Committee about, non-technical pieces, although we've been more focused on like the writing and speaking and those aspects of it than necessarily the kind of multidisciplinary piece that you've mentioned here. Judy, what do you want to throw in on that?
Well, I would agree with everything you just said. We have certainly talked about like the communications part of it. I think at different universities, right? So for example, our senior capstone design course is a huge part of it is teamwork on multidisciplinary teams. And so I believe quite a few universities do have courses like that. I would say that it's extremely helpful when we have, people from the industry coming in and emphasizing, like, not just us telling the students how important this is, and, being able to like think beyond our little silos, and, know enough about some of the other disciplines to be able to communicate well and, come up with good solutions that, encompass, again, more than like just like the structural engineering focus that we're most interested in. And I don't know, we have a current initiative on it right now, but we have talked about things like encouraging guest speakers and like helping set up in universities with guest speakers who might come in and talk about not just technical aspects, but things like what you're mentioning in terms of multidisciplinary collaboration, communications, those different skills. I
Thank
guess
you.
I would add too is Scott and I most recently got invited to join, I want to say the acronym is CROSSI, and it's looking at curriculum reform for structural engineering education. And if I'm not mistaken, some threads of what you were mentioning, Kenneth, are within that scope, but we haven't joined our first meeting yet, so I'm not entirely sure, but I feel like we're moving in a good direction to kind of explore these types of topics as we move forward.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say, I think, Ken, you brought up a good point. Is there a footprint for NCSEA to push the bigger picture? Yeah, that one's a difficult one, I think. As an organization set up for professional, structural engineers, we tend to be focused inwardly on, technical development and promote and improving our profession within our folks. It's a lot harder to turn that outward and try and gain traction in the bigger world, I think. I think that, you look at some of the other organizations, I think ASCE would probably come to most people's mind as a much bigger organization with a much broader base than we are. But, I look at some of the things that California does with manual production, with their seismic manuals and everything. I mean, those member organizations are doing some great work out there. And I think that that's, a model of the direction that as a group we can go when we start looking at, not only how can we help ourselves within our profession, but our exterior communications group is really focusing on social media right now and trying to get that message out in different avenues and engaging with some communication folks that are industry folks that can help us to figure out like how do we crack into that bigger picture and help promote structural engineering to the broader society. And I think basic education right now is more focused inwardly, again, just as most groups have been within NCSEA for a long time, about what we can do to help students and educators, especially at that level. But certainly there's a bigger picture there about how do we get more people interested in structural engineering? How do we get more students to come into structural engineering? How do we promote diversity within structural engineering education and structural engineering? And I think that, at the collegiate level, I know that Judy's talked a couple of times to our group about how some stuff that, didn't exist, a while ago, I'll just say, when I was in school, about diversity and inclusion, within structural engineering, and that being part of what gets welded into their curriculum that used to not exist at all. So I'm excited about some of those aspects of it.
Any additional questions for Judy or Scott? And you could do it live. It's a lot easier than
Yeah, you
trying
can just speak up. You can unmute yourself and just speak up. That's fine too.
any additional questions for either of the committee chairs?
I think just for the recording, let's just make sure Alan posted in the chat, when you meet with the student chapter, remember to also invite the leadership of the sponsoring MO. Good point. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that is a good point, Alan. There's a couple of times some of the students that I talked about who are going to be on our group for the virtual panel, we've reached out to them through the their faculty advisor because we happen to know faculty at those places. But you're right, we certainly don't intend to sidestep or skip out on the member organization. And I appreciate that comment as a reminder to us to make sure that we work both directions. Thank you.
And Scott and Judy, if someone does have a question and they weren't brave enough, or maybe it can't formulate it quite right, how do they get a hold of you, or how should they get a hold of you?
I would say the easiest way to get a hold of me is probably via email. I will actually post my email address here in the chat box. I apologize. I probably should have put it on one of the slides somewhere. But there it is.
As he's typing, you're also welcome to contact staff at any point in time, and we'll get you to the right people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Leo. That's true as well. And I think Judy just posted hers. But yeah, we're, like I said, if anybody's interested in participating, definitely reach out to us. We'd be happy to let you come, join us at any meeting at any time. And we usually meet for about an hour at the most. A couple of those initiatives have teams assigned to them, and they'll meet separately and then report back to the group on a monthly basis. But you can come and sit in and see if it's something that interests you or something that you've got a passion in, that, if you've got ideas and a willingness. I mean, we're certainly welcome, would be our welcoming group, and would be excited to have some more folks come join us.
There you go. We'll take the silence as complete. How's that?
Okay.
There you go. Judy, thank you.
Thank
Scott,
you, guys. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
And everyone that was involved. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much.
All right.